Hi there, and we're excited to teach you about AI and business compliance. So, what is artificial intelligence? So, AI broadly refers to technologies that enable machines to simulate human cognitive functions, like problem solving or even decision making. AI systems use algorithms to process data, identify trends, and make predictions or recommendations. But AI is not a single technology. It's an umbrella term that includes machine learning, robotics, and more. For example, when Netflix recommends a show to you based on your viewing history, that's AI. So in business, AI is being used in virtually every functional area. In customer service, for example, we see AI-powered chatbots that can be handled for thousands of questions at the same time with consistent accuracy. But what's especially powerful is how AI enhances operational optimization. With access to real-time data analytics, businesses can make decisions faster and with greater confidence. But this isn't just about efficiency. It's a fundamental shift in how organizations operate, compete, and grow. We can think of AI not just as a tool, but increasingly as a virtual employee. For instance, AI can now write insurance claims, perform quality checks in manufacturing, and even write legal memos. This is redefining the scope of what can be automated in the workplace. AI's ability to autonomously perform specific tasks reduce labor costs as well. For example, consider HR departments using AI to screen thousands of resumes, identifying keywords, qualifications, and red flags within seconds. But AI also enables a transformative impact on customer engagement. AI models can personalize interactions at scale. For example, think of Spotify or Amazon, tailoring not just recommendations of what you've seen, but based on what other people just like you have seen as well. This drives deeper loyalty and higher sales conversion. However, with AI's benefits comes a dramatically evolving risk environment, especially from a legal compliance perspective. Organizations are dealing with a host of new issues, and traditional compliance models were not designed to address these new issues. First, the sheer volume of data processed by AI systems presents significant privacy and data governance challenges. Who do we know is collecting this information? Is consent needed to acquire this data? And where is this new data being stored? Second, regulators are struggling to keep pace. There are laws ranging from global laws and for state laws that are trying to adapt to this new compliance risk of AI. This creates huge challenges for legal teams tasked with demonstrating compliance. Ethical risks compound these problems. AI decisions may be biased, particularly if training data reflects personal opinions. We've seen AI hiring tools that favor male applicants over females. These risks can lead not only to legal liability, but also to reputational damage. Ultimately, businesses must implement ongoing dynamic compliance frameworks that account for both legal requirements and ethical responsibilities. Current policies won't cut it, and risk management must evolve alongside the technology itself. That's why raising organizational awareness around AI compliance is critical. It's not just a task for IT or legal teams, it's a company-wide important issue. Every department using AI needs to understand the regulatory implications, the ethical risk, and the importance of responsible data practices. This means creating internal educational programs, helping employees understand how AI systems make decisions and how to flag issues early. It also means creating clear policies and governance structures that define who is responsible for AI oversight and how are decisions being audited. Just as importantly, businesses must cultivate a culture of trust and compliance. Trust is the foundation of brand loyalty. If consumers believe your AI is biased, they'll walk away. By contrast, companies that are transparent about how their AI works, who own their data and what safeguards are in place, are more likely to retain customers and attract new investors. And finally, we must remember that AI innovation and regulatory compliance aren't mutually exclusive. In fact, responsible AI use drives long-term innovation. Companies that prioritize ethical and legal frameworks early on will not only avoid costly setbacks, but will be better positioned to scale responsibly and sustainably.
Now that you have an understanding of what AI is, how it's used, and some of the risks associated with it, let's dive into the regulatory landscape. We'll start off with domestic regulation. So it's largely patchwork. As you'll see if you do some research or engage in this AI space in terms of compliance, there is no single, all-encompassing federal AI statute. A lot of pre-existing laws apply to maybe subject AI use cases. Some examples of that are existing privacy laws, both federal and state. We have HIPAA, which has, data security and anonymity and consent requirements. If you're using AI to, I guess, verify consent and anonymity, there could be some problems there. COPPA, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, is similar to HIPAA in that it's a privacy law, but it's more about children, not necessarily medical data. Similar stuff though, consent, is even more pressing when you're dealing with children. How do you verify parental consent with AI? Stuff like that. And then the CCPA is a similar state example. So we have state and federal privacy laws that apply. Similarly, we have consumer protection laws. Section 5 of the FTC Act regulates deceptive and unfair trade practices. So, maybe if you overstate your AI's capabilities, or if your AI is biased or misrepresents facts, often could be a problem there. Same with the FCRA. If you're using AI in credit scoring, tenant selection, things like that, it could be subject. And then similarly, we have civil rights laws, using AI for employment decisions could give rise to a discrimination claim. And then we have the ADA and the ECOA. Is your AI accessible? Is your AI being used in lending decisions? So you can see how, again, it's patchwork. There are a lot of pre-existing laws that apply based on how the AI is used domestically. Now, internationally and globally, there are more universally applicable statutes, laws that are made specifically to govern AI use. So the GDPR is a privacy law, but there are several relevant articles, including Article 5, fair, transparent, relevant, etc. Data processing as a requirement. So if you're using AI to process data and it maybe isn't fair, or isn't transparent, you're gonna have a problem under the GDPR. Article 22 is very applicable. Consumers have a right to not have their data be subject to automated decision making, aka AI. Article 32 requires sufficient security measures. If you're using AI to secure or, again, process data, could be a problem. And then Article 35 requires DPIAs for any new or high-risk tech, which I think is pretty applicable to AI. It's both new and high risk. And then there's also the EU AI Act, which is the first and only comprehensive, specific to AI law that exists, globally. And it's based on a risk-based categorization system. There are 4 categories. Those AI systems that present unacceptable risk, manipulative systems or social scoring systems are entirely prohibited. Then next are high-risk use cases. Maybe the use case itself is sensitive, or maybe it's an ordinary use, but it's in a more sensitive, area like medical or education, and those are highly regulated. There's a series of obligations that anyone who's using or selling an AI model that presents a high risk. There are a ton of obligations under the EU AI Act. And then there are also limited and minimal risk. Limited risk is more about transparency, a lot less regulation. It's more so just being transparent about the capabilities of your AI, the type of results it can produce, that kind of thing. But there are way less obligations in terms of compliance and what the system has to be able to do, things like that. And the minimal risk stuff we've had for a long time, like AI, NPCs and video games, that stuff is entirely unregulated by the Act. There are other, non-binding, regimes, you could call them. They are, again, non-binding, but they are influential. They almost function as like treaties. Treaties are binding, but these ideological, summaries of AI compliance, and you're gonna have to cut this part out. I just got lost. So there are also other non-binding but influential regimes. They sort of function like treaties. Treaties are binding. These are not, but they resemble treaties in that individual states ratify them. And put an example here: the OECD AI principles, again non-binding, but have been ratified by 47 countries, including the United States. So definitely influential. And while not itself a law, could shape future laws. So we've just discussed, not all. There are plenty more, but many of the laws that you could be subject to in using or selling AI. Now we'll talk about the enforcers. Again, patchwork. Given the lack of a single, all-encompassing federal law governing AI, we use a bunch of different pre-existing regulations and laws. So therefore, a bunch of pre-existing agencies enforce those laws. The FTC, SEC, DOJ, the OCR of the HHS, and so on and so forth. There are also state and local enforcers. For example, we discussed the CCPA, the California privacy law. That is enforced by the California Privacy Protection Agency and the California AG. International and global enforcers, the GDPR and AI Act. The GDPR is enforced by specific data protection authorities in each EU member state. And the EU Act is enforced, the EU AI Act, is enforced by the European Commission AI Office, which is brand new. It was affected with the Act, and national market surveillance authorities. And then just like in the United States, where we have a bunch of individual states with their own laws, maybe privacy or specific to AI, there are regional, country-to-country, jurisdiction-specific enforcers as well. So what does that mean? Well, the regulatory landscape represents that businesses, especially businesses that are doing business, or maybe not even doing business, but collecting data from people in the EU, they face a ton of conflicting and overlapping obligations that come from different regimes that govern different jurisdictions, and some will enforce certain things and others won't. Priorities are different. It's very difficult given how new this technology is and the laws surrounding it. So I'm going to pass it off to my colleague now to discuss best practices.
Let's now discuss some real-world AI compliance issues. Let's talk about what's at stake. First of all, AI compliance issues can lead to regulatory scrutiny. Artificial intelligence technologies are increasingly under the microscope of global regulatory bodies due to concerns over data privacy, misinformation, and ethical use. High-profile cases, which we'll discuss, include notable investigations and fines which highlight the importance of compliance in AI development and deployment initiatives. These cases have a global impact, implications for AI companies worldwide, which emphasize the need for robust compliance frameworks. The first case we're going to discuss is that of OpenAI and the FTC investigation into them. OpenAI is perhaps the largest trendsetter in the AI artificial intelligence sphere. In July of 2023, the Federal Trade Commission, which is a regulatory body that initiates investigations and brings enforcement actions against companies for consumer protection violations, it launched an investigation into OpenAI, focusing on potential violations of consumer protection laws. Those breaches included ones related to data privacy, which included allegations that OpenAI got rid of public data without proper consent. Those related to misinformation, which included instances where ChatGPT, which is OpenAI's large language model, generated false or misleading information about individuals. And also data security. A March 2023 data breach exposed some users' chat histories and even such sensitive content as the user's payment information. Regulatory actions included the FTC issuing a 20-page demand for records detailing OpenAI's risk mitigation strategies and data handling practices. Another notable case is that of Clearview AI and GDPR enforcement against them. Clearview AI is a US-based facial recognition company which collected over 20 billion images from the internet without individuals' consent in order to help develop its AI model. In October of 2022, France's Data Protection Authority, the CNIL, fined Clearview AI 20 million euro for violating the General Data Protection Regulation. Some of the violations identified included unlawful data processing and processing personal data without a legal basis. Also included failure to respect rights and not honoring individuals' rights to access, rectify, or delete their data, and included lack of cooperation in ignoring the CNIL's orders to cease data collection and processing. The consequences included Clearview AI being ordered to stop all data collection on individuals in France and to delete existing data. And this included a penalty of $100,000 per day for noncompliance. In the next section, you're going to learn about some best practices when using AI for your business. However, it's vitally important to keep in mind these two instances, OpenAI and Clearview AI, to help give you context during your watch of the next section. OpenAI and Clearview AI represent two of the giants in the artificial intelligence industry. If this can happen to them, it can happen to you too. So in the next section, think about some of the ways that Clearview AI and OpenAI went wrong in their use of artificial intelligence in their business. And remember to keep them in mind when determining how to best operate your business to avoid regulatory scrutiny and exorbitant fines and penalties.
Artificial intelligence has taken the world by storm. It is a multi-billion-dollar, if not even trillion-dollar industry. And they're constantly coming up with better, faster, and newer chips, processing software. As we saw a month or two ago, DeepSeek announced something, an AI language model that was done at a fraction of the price of NVIDIA and wiped out hundreds of billions of dollars in value. AI is here. AI is not going away. AI can have a lot of good uses, which is why we have the need to create ethical policies for AI. What does that mean? AI cannot make any decisions on its own. It doesn't have ethics. It's not a human being. The only values that it has are the data that's inputted by humans, which can leave it open to biases, because human beings have biases, and what we put into our data is what you're going to get out of it. Input equals output. The AI is not able to understand the very complex and sophisticated level of human interactions, such as political realities, social context, nuance, sarcasm, the way somebody's body language might look one way when they made a comment and the words mean another way. So AI is not the do-all, be-all, end-all. It's definitely a great tool, but that's why if we're going to be using it, we have to have a very strong, robust ethical policies guiding us. Because what's going to happen if a company uses it and then produces a policy that is the product of biases based on the data that was inputted into it? Now the company's going to have reputational damage. Investors are not going to be happy. Stakeholders in the public are not going to be happy. Additionally, AI sometimes, I believe the term is, hallucinates. There was a last year where a lawyer actually used AI to look for cases, and it just made them up. It created a citation, a case, and everything, and the lawyer didn't double check it, and the lawyer included it in his brief to the judge, and he actually got called out on it, and he got in trouble for it. So very strong need to have ethical AI policies. Company needs to have risk assessments to do these policies. There needs to be a hierarchy. Okay, there are certain things that are illegal. Can't use AI to do something deceptive, because then you're going to violate the FTC Act. Okay, unfair and deceptive advertisement. So that's problem number one, straight out illegal. The next thing is if something is high risk, healthcare information or personal data. If the AI uses that software and takes somebody's personal information and then creates a model based on that, that's also going to be a problem. The next tier would be limited minimal risk, which is a chat bot. A lot of times you go on a website, you click the help icon, and a little chat box will pop up that'll say, hey, I am, Shelly, the chat bot, how can I help you? It's a way for the company to avoid people calling in and save time and money. And sometimes to certain questions, the system could just answer you. It doesn't have to delve deep into it. So first, once the company has to figure out all the different various levels that they're possibly exposed to. Then you have to identify the likelihood of harm. What's going to happen? Meaning, should the company allow the AI, chatbots, language model, whatever it is, a certain level of freedom to decide on its own what it's going to do based on the input from the customer? Or we're going to need approval, whether it's a manager or senior level. They have to sign off before the AI generates something to avoid possible complications. There also can be scenarios where there might be actions that, if they occur, the damage will be very high, but there's a low probability of that occurring. Is AI gonna, do a Terminator and shut off the power grid because it feels that humans are a threat due to climate change? I mean, the damage would be pretty high, but relatively low possibility. Or there's something that's low in damage, but a high probability that an action will occur. For example, if a customer says something not pleasant, the AI bot might just disconnect the call. But then you have a problem where you're going to have bad customer service, just to give you an example. So a company needs to make all these determinations and create this matrix. The next thing that the company has to do is have transparency and human oversight and accountability. Company can't just wave up their hands and say, hey, the AI did it and we don't know anything about it. No, we're the human beings, we're the ones that created it, we're the ones that are using it, we're the ones that are going to have to use it. You have to train your employees on how to use it, how to detect errors, detect hallucinations, detect deception on behalf of the machine. And nobody's saying that anyone's doing anything intentional. But because it is machine learning, it is something that we're going to have to take a good, hard look at. What documentation is the company going to keep on file? Is that documentation going to allow the company to identify risks and have a clear mitigation strategy to reduce that risk from occurring or reoccurring if it had already happened? What is the accountability? Is it from the supervisor in charge of the audit, to the manager who approved the AI output, to the board of directors, if the board of directors created a subcommittee which has the oversight of the AI? Furthermore, what is the employee training and response plan if there is an issue that's detected? So employees need to understand what are the AI's capabilities and limitations. So if all of a sudden there's an output, but the employees are like, wait a second, this machine shouldn't be able to do that, or it doesn't make sense based on the question that we asked it, we need to do a little bit further of investigation. For example, privacy and data sharing. If the artificial intelligence model doesn't protect the information correctly, then the company can design a system that a human being has to sign off on any data release. 23andMe just recently filed for bankruptcy. I believe it was last year. They had a hack. A lot of people's personal data got released. The company never really recovered from that. As we talked about before, AI has biases based on human beings that inputted the data to create it. The employee should be trained how to detect it and compensate for any flaws in the model. And mitigation planning can also show any regulator that the company took the responsibility of privacy and mitigation seriously from a legal and regulatory standpoint, besides for the fact that it'll only help the company in the long run, showing that they took it seriously.